Hello, everybody listening to the Life Plus God podcast. You are tuned in to the Unlearn Faith series with Alyssa Robinson and Pastor Doug Meyer.
Hey.
So, last month we talked about unlearning temptation leading into the holidays. And now here we are. It's December and we are trying to unlearn loss.
Yeah, that's heavy. Are we ready for this today?
I
don't even know what that
means.
Because most of the time when people have loss, nobody gave them a heads up. Sometimes, but not always.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about and leave space for. So the way that this podcast series works with Unlearn Faith is in the YouVersion app, we pick out a devotion that we dig into, and we are in the middle of a devotion called Seeing Beautiful Again. And it is all about being able to see beautiful after you've gone through a loss and are experiencing grief. And so typically in this series, we are going day by day through this devotion. There's a link to this devotion in the episode description. I hope that you'll check it out. But we really just wanted to leave some space for us to have an open-ended conversation about loss, because I know that Doug and I both have recently experienced loss, and there are a lot of members of our community who are going through major earth-shattering loss, unimaginable type stuff. And we are heading into Christmas.
Yeah, there's something about December. I think, I don't know, right before Thanksgiving, somebody told me once when the first Hallmark feel-good commercial comes on, they start this funky feeling because it's all remembrance, and fairy tale of when grandma's here or not now, or husband, wife, sister, brother, whomever. It's a trigger for a lot of people.
Yeah, and so to be, full transparency, the loss that I'm going through, continuing to go through, is that on November 27th of 2020, my grandmother died. That was the day after Thanksgiving. And so although this is not my first Christmas without her, it is my first Christmas after processing. Because I'll say, our Christmas last year as a family, I think we were all still kind of in shock.
Sleepwalking kind of.
And, we had moments of sadness, but it just, we still were processing all of our emotions. And to this day, a year later, I'm still processing all of the emotions. Can you tell us a little bit about the loss you're experiencing?
Yeah. So let's see. Ours meaning so Wendy's dad died in December of last year of 20. I have to kind of check myself on dates. My mom died January 10th of 21. Just a week ago, a real good friend of ours died of an overdose. And in between, we all know and love and do life with people who have either experienced it first ring, second ring, third ring out of their lives. And, the word you were using a minute ago is just intriguing because processing. I don't think that from the moment you have a loss of what I would call a close-in relation, I think you process it the rest of your life.
Yeah, I've had a conversation with my dad because his brother passed away when he was really young. And one time I remember we were driving in the car, and I had never really asked him about his brother before. And I asked the question, when were you able to get through that? When were you done working through that? And he paused for a second, long enough that I thought, oh, maybe he just doesn't want to answer the question. Maybe I shouldn't have asked. And so we just sat in silence for a while, and he was just thinking, and he said, I've never gotten over it. Mm-hmm. It never goes away.
Yeah, I believe that.
And that struck me And I never really understood it. And I still won't say I fully understand it because it's very different. Your 87-year-old grandmother passing and, someone being taken way too early.
And I think maybe, I've had some experience with it. My dad died 20 years ago when he turned 60 of a heart attack. And so that was my first close in. Before that, my grandparents had all passed, but I didn't have a relationship with them like they were a part of my everyday life. They lived far away in Minnesota. I think there has something, our grief level has something to do with how integral that person is woven into the fabric of our lives. And, there's all sorts of different ways to look at it, but I kind of feel like, there is, for me, like this place in my heart that he resides and my mom resides, and I don't know. I don't think it cuts out and goes away. Yeah. I choose for it not to anyway.
So one of the questions that I had before we, start getting into the devotion, and we might not get through all of the devotion today. We might just decide we want to talk about what we want to talk about, and that's okay. Yeah. Do you remember specifically having conversations about loss growing up, being trained in like how to go through a loss or anything?
Mm-mm. So I have a real clear memory, though, of my first experience with close-in death was coming home from school one day, and my mom was sitting at our kitchen table crying. And, when your mom cries, the world stops. It's like, whoa, what's going on? And she had just found out that her mother had died, who lived in California. So it was the first time I saw a parent openly weep. Just, the kind of guttural weeping you do when your parent dies. And some time passed, and then we all got in a car, and we drove to Minnesota, which is where they were from, to go to her funeral. I'd never been to a funeral before. I think I was in about the third grade. And what I remember, though, is kind of being unattended, like dressing up and tagging along. And all of a sudden, it was time to go to the funeral. And we're standing in the back of the church, and I look up, and there's her casket, and it's an open casket. And she's laying there. Duh. And I just freak out. And I start running, and I run all the way back to my other grandparents' house. And nobody came and got me. I guess they decided that was a good and right and safe thing for me to do. And I sat on the porch of my other grandmother's house until everybody got back after the funeral. But that, even today, I can close my eyes, and I can see my grandmother laying in that casket. And it's not funny, but there was not, I have no, that is frozen. Nobody came and sat me on their lap afterwards and said, wow, that was big and scary. Let's talk about it. I just got to create my own story of all of that.
Yeah.
Do
you wish that someone had? Or do you feel like it was, I don't know, because I think that that's a big question for a lot of people, is how do you help children through their first experience of death?
Yeah. No, I think it's, I think it is more helpful. I'll just give you now an illustration of so when my dad died, my boys were the same age when I experienced my grandmother's death. And, their mom and I were, it was a shock. He died of a heart attack. So we all load up, we drive to Houston, we do all the things you do. And we were at the visitation, and we're standing there looking at his casket, looking at him. And I'm just, overcome. And my boys took my hand and said, here, Daddy, pet Grandpa. And I just was weird about it and didn't really want to. And they were like, now, this is like the wisdom from young, right? They said, now, Daddy, he's going to be kind of cold. I was like, okay. Because the stuff that makes him warm, that's what's living with Jesus now. And, of course, I just was weeping. I'm about to right now. But it just, I so admired their courage of standing there. And they had written notes and colored pictures and stuck them in, Grandpa's jacket and stuff. Now, this was years later. So maybe everybody's death, that funeral home managers and all that, was more relaxed. But to know that they had this ease of being right there with their grandpa, deceased body, being able to touch him, that weirds out a lot of adults, touching a dead body.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when my great-grandmother died, I was terrified. That was the first time I saw a dead body because they did an open casket viewing. And my mom leaned in and kissed her on the forehead. And I was like, what are you doing? And my mom was like, you can touch her if you want to. And she was trying to encourage me to like interact. And I was like, no thanks, I'm good. Thanks, Mom. Yeah. And my sister made the decision when Grandmommy died, we did a private viewing. Obviously, it was in the middle of COVID and everything going on. So we did a private viewing. She decided not to bring the kids. I'm wondering if it's because she had a similar experience of Gran as I did, of like, it scared me.
Sure.
They were younger. I was 12. My niece and nephew are 7 and 4. So it scared me. And but what is interesting about the kids, because of COVID, we had a funeral service that was extremely small, maybe 10 people. That was actually a graveside service. And then we waited to have the big memorial service until August of 2021, just to make sure that everything was safe. And so the reaction of the kids at the graveside service, I don't think that they fully got what was going on. And Sarah and John kept turning to, my sister and brother-in-law and saying, Aunt Alyssa's crying. Look, Aunt Alyssa's crying. Like they couldn't, because I'm not a crier. And so for them, it's kind of like when Mom cries, the world stops.
Sure.
When Aunt Alyssa cries, the world stops.
Yeah.
And
it was real disconcerting. They were doing,
they were concerned about me, and all of the sweetness came out, of like, we drew a picture for her, like, it's okay, Aunt Alyssa, patting you on the shoulder. Fast forward to the memorial service, 9 months later, little Sarah had a complete emotional meltdown during that memorial service of crying, realizing she misses Grandmommy. Like they had a lot of special moments together, and it's not often that a great-grandparent gets to connect on that level with a great-grandchild. And I was just thinking, man, that makes total sense, that it takes 9 months for a child to even realize she's not coming back.
Well,
and I think that it hit her all at once because she was inconsolable during that memorial service and just weeping and falling apart. And people thought that, she was supposed to sing at the end. So we had this great idea, great ideas, but of having a great-grandchildren's choir sing Jesus Loves Me at the end of the service. And so we have, I think, 9 great-grandkids, and 3 of them right away were like, nope, not interested. And we were like, okay, that's fine. And 6 of them said, yes, we want to do it. And then 4 out of the 6, the morning of, were like, no, we don't want to do it. We're scared. And we were like, that's okay. It's fine. And so then it was just down to Sarah and John. We're going to be, and in the bulletins, we had printed the great-grandkids choir. And so it was just going to be Sarah and John. And they had practiced. They had both planned on going up there. And then Sarah just fell apart during the service and couldn't do it. And so little 4-year-old John was like, well, I'm going to do it. And he went up there and he was the great-grandkids choir singing by himself, Jesus Loves Me. And I just know, but I also, I need Sarah to know, girl, it is okay. Sure. There is nothing wrong with not being able to get up there and sing a song. And I'm proud of you for taking that time to cry that you probably haven't gotten to have as a little 7-year-old processing what is death.
Well, and like you said,
permanence of it.
So from when great-grandma got, her illness got to where it limited her life to the point of death, and she died, and then how many months later was it?
I think it was about 8-9 months later.
So I think in that 8 or 9 months, probably Mom and Dad and everybody had some chance to process what that all meant.
Yeah.
And she matured a little bit. Yeah. I mean, so she was growing too. Her brain was expanding and being able to understand all that. And like you said, it takes a while to realize, and I think even in adult world, that person's not coming back.
Yeah.
I think we think, oh, did I hear their voice or this or that and the other? And I think it's just the brain adapting to, that person always had that spot right there. And damn it, now they don't.
Well, I mean, it's a year later, and I feel like doing this podcast episode, I feel like I'm on the verge of tears. Like, it is hard for me to keep talking about it because it really is like when I was on vacation, we would be out to breakfast, and I don't know what, and crying is not my thing. Crying in a public place?
Oh my gosh.
Very not my thing.
You did not do that, did you?
I cried in the middle of Denver, Colorado at a little breakfast place. Something struck me.
Wow.
And I started crying in the middle of breakfast at a restaurant. And my partner, Jacob, was like, what? Did I do something? Like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm just having some feelings that I don't understand.
Aw, I think that's kind of sweet in a way.
Yeah.
Poor Jacob. I can imagine him thinking, oh gosh, okay.
But the emotion just comes out of nowhere. Yep. And sometimes I don't even know what triggers it. It's just like a little thought that pops into your head and all of these swelling of emotion comes back over and over and over again. And sometimes I'm sitting here wondering, okay, when is that going to stop? Yeah. I would because I would like for it to be a little more predictable of like maybe not when I'm standing in line at the DMV or whatever.
I think that is that's a really interesting question because I think, like for me, it comes up sounds or songs or things that trigger some kind of squishy spot in the heart and brain that are remembrance.
Or chicken and waffles.
Exactly. I mean, that triggers a lot for me. But like with my mom, even like recipes that Wendy will make that she made that create that smell, that creates a soft spot. And, the one thing I would say is I think it's a good and right and normal, wonderful thing just to let that emotion come up and the tears. And I don't know, I always just feel like it's a little holy memorial for that person,
Are you someone who likes to be surrounded by people when you're going through loss and you want that support network? Or are you someone who's like, I need to withdraw and go into my cave and reemerge at some point ready to interact with people?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes to all of the above. I think the thing I want more than anything is to be in control because the world doesn't in that moment feel like it's in control. So I want to be able to say people time, people go away time. One of the things that I am prone to do is to kind of be on because in part that's kind of what we do as pastors, especially when you put us up in front of people. So I'm real conscious of my vulnerability meter shutting down when I'm on. And I feel very naked, so to speak. And I don't like that feeling.
Ooh, I can't imagine that pressure of you're experiencing a loss and everyone thinks as a pastor, you should be fully comforted by God.
Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to be kind of like have it all together. Like when I even am anticipating, I'm helping do a service a week from tomorrow. And as I have written some of it out, I've already started crying.
Yeah.
And I had that experience a couple of years ago with a church member's funeral here. And everything in my intellect was saying, you're not supposed to cry right now. You're not supposed to cry right now.
Yeah, this isn't about you.
Yeah.
Don't, yeah.
And, but then it sometimes the emotion of our body overrides the false story going on in our head. And my experience has been just give into it. Let it happen, and it's all going to be okay. But, I think there is something really private about grieving. And it is, like as a pastor, when I'm invited into somebody's story, it feels very sacred. And it creates this kind of kinship that almost is like for a while, you're family. Because people have decided that you are a safe person to be around in their extreme grief,
Yeah,
and that you'll handle it gently or something. And I take that real seriously. It's usually just awesome and it's just very big and heavy.
Yeah, I'm very much a shut the world out, family only, like family only. And that includes, I am not a person who seeks comfort from a pastor. So my first person to go to is not my pastor with stuff like that. And not only that, I don't want to bring the pastor in at any point. Well, thanks. You know, even my friends, for the most part, like I really narrow it down to like just family.
Sure. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. And so I don't want to talk to anybody about anything until I'm ready. And sometimes that means I'm never going to be ready to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of text messages, you know, sorry everybody who sent me loving, caring text messages after Grandmommy passed that I never responded to. But I looked at it and I put it down because I couldn't handle the human interaction. Well,
and I think I would invite you to accept that was enough.
Yeah.
You know, I think there are people who want to, invite themselves into your grief. And it's a weird deal. And I don't know what it's about other than they think somehow vicariously that makes them closer to you or whatever.
Well, see, and that's what I wonder about is that I don't think that they're doing that because they're being nosy. I think it's because everybody's frame of reference is through what they would want. So like it's when someone is going through a deep grief, I back off. I don't reach out. I don't.
You give them what you would want.
And maybe I hurt their feelings because they're like, Alyssa didn't even reach out to me. But that's because that's what I would want. And I need to do a better job of recognizing, okay, this person is different from me. Maybe they want me to be there. Maybe. But I think that someone who kind of pushes themselves on you is because that's what they wanted when they were going through grief and nobody showed up. And they want to be the person that shows up. So I want to think it's out of love and care and not nosiness, but we only think about ourselves and what we want and project that on others.
I think when that happens, we all go into a circle of the wagons and we're doing like this emotional protection thing, right? We're kind of just holding everything close or at bay or whatever. And I just try to give people permission, like if I'm with a family, do what you need to do for you. And again, this is, you know, there's all sorts of old rules. Like when we sit down and plan, and we're going to do this afternoon, a memorial service, I say to families, there aren't rules. You know, whatever you think we have to do, make it be that it's meaningful to you, not because that's how they did it at your grandmother's service or your great-grandmother's or somewhere online you read every funeral, you're supposed to do this, that, or the other. That's ridiculous. No, you're not. So.
Well, and let me tell you, the memorial completely caught me off guard. So I don't know why in my head. So I told you I'm kind of a withdrawing person and I want to experience my emotions by myself. So I had it in my head that the memorial, I am giving my reflections. I go up, I give my reflections. I'm done. I go home. And then
how nice and clean.
I know. And then I'm expected. I realize, and I don't know why I never thought about it until the moment that we were being dismissed from the service. Holy crap, I have to go out there and talk to people now. Everybody wants to come up and talk to me and say, oh, your reflections were so beautiful. Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I just have to have this receiving line of people.
Yeah.
And so when little Sarah was breaking down at the end of the service, I grabbed her and I was like, do you want to just sit in here and we can wait in here and we can take as long as you want. And I was like, please say you want to stay in here and I'll stay in here with you because I don't want to go out there. And she was like, brave little girl. She was like, no, I'm ready. We can go out there. I was like, are you sure? Take your time.
You're saying on the
emotions
inside,
need to be processed.
No, we're not really ready. I need you to be my emotional cover right now.
Yeah, but like it just never occurred to me that I have to play host at the memorial and talk to people. And all I wanted to do, because the service was held at the church I work at, I just wanted to go into my office and lock the door and make the rest of my family make excuses for me.
Just put a leave me alone sign on the door.
All the family comes back to the house. And so you got a family of 25 people hanging out in the living room and all you want to do is decompress. And now you're entertaining. I mean, my mom is a superhero. Like she had people living in her house for 3 days. But I just, all of the rigmarole that goes with it caught me.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think of it.
I think it's a weird deal that our society does to people who are grieving, that sometimes then they are hosting. And it seems like it makes perfect sense to say, leave a casserole on the porch and go away.
Yeah, go get a hotel room.
Yeah. And like what I
Not
was
to
going
offend
say,
any family who might be listening who stayed with my parents.
yeah,
But
no, she loves y'all.
yeah.
So like during COVID, we had a couple of services here in which, in managing exposure and contact, we had the families just walk out, right? No receiving line, no punching cookies and all that mess. And it felt kind of good.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to any of them afterwards. Like it all depends, I think, on the story. In some people want to be hugged and held and told, I love you, I care about you. Other people want you to just stay the F away. Other people, it is a celebration of life in such that they're able to gather and find strength in getting together and recalling stories. But you're right. It's hard to, there's not a SWAT that says, everybody needs to do it this way.
Yeah.
And culturally, we just stumble all over it.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, okay.
Well, and what I really wanted to do was just be selfish and go home after it was all done.
What would have happened if you had? What would have been the worst
I would
thing?
have felt terrible about it. I would have felt
Why?
terrible because I love my mom and my sister so much. And the thought of leaving them on their own.
Oh, like you had bailed on them
Like
somehow.
I bailed on them and they have to stay behind and host everybody
gotcha.
and I'm not helping.
Yeah.
So it's more about taking care of the people that I love and so I realized like there was some stuff every day, every night with family getting together, dinners, lunches, potlucks, like all of this stuff.
A lot of exposure and expectation.
Mom kept telling me, she was like, you don't have to come to everything. I know like you're in Dallas and it's farther away, which I come out here every day for work. It's not like I don't come out.
She was trying to give you a pass.
She was trying to give me a pass, and I think my family does that because they know that's what I need. Is I am more withdrawing when it comes to things like this, and I want to tuck away and not talk to anybody for a while, and they know that about me. So I think they were giving me permission to do that, but I also felt like that wasn't the right thing for me to do.
Sure.
Is to check out and leave them to it.
Well, and sometimes what we want isn't what we need. Like maybe even though you wanted to go away, as a part of just the whole, again, that word we use, processing of it, was to put yourself in some vulnerable places. Mm-hmm. And who knows, maybe the next time, and, gosh, we hope that'll be forever from now. But, in a perfect world, wouldn't it be great if families could say, here's what I need. Here's how I want to process this. And everybody says, okay, well, let's see how close we can come to what everybody wants. And there's going to be a little give and take. You're going to get all of what you want in here, but hey, we really need you to have our back on this, and vice versa. And, again, most of us, because we just don't have the emotional wherewithal to do it, we just plow through it and clean up the mess afterwards.
So what are some of so when we were getting into the personality and the differences in the way we handle things, that's what was leading into this question. What are some of the unhelpful things that people have said to you? Yeah.
Well, there's a whole list of them. And what I have to, like, first I'll react and I'll judge them and call them names and say how stupid they are.
Never to their face, though. Only to Wendy.
No, always behind their back in a loving way. But I think people are trying to say something that either they've heard, so it's just pass it on, like, I don't know, Facebook theology or whatever, or they were told, and I want to believe that they don't really think about how silly that sounds, or really how, the one that is a big one, and some of it is just sense making. They're trying to figure out, okay, why did this happen? Well, God gets the blame for a lot of it. Oh, that was, it's just so hard to understand God's will. Well, so what that means is your loved one, God's picked that your loved one would die. And I don't jive with that in any way, shape, or form. But so people expand that. There is some really, I think, unhealthy theology around. There is some stuff that I think has been propagated out of funeral home card theology of God needed another flower in his garden. God wanted, God needed. And, it's a God attribute. Some people find that very comforting. I hear. I find it repulsive.
The word infuriating came to my mind.
Yeah, I have said, I was told something similar to that once, and I said, well, I don't want anything to do with that God. That's not my God. But I think people think that lets you know that God knew your loved one and knew better than anybody else what was next and needed for their life. And I just don't think that's how God rolls. That's not my understanding of God in any way, shape, or form. So anything that attributes your loved one's death to God's will, or the other one that I think you said you'd heard, like, oh, they're in a better place now. Mm. Well, so no, I really think the better place is for them to be here with me at the dinner table. Yeah. What do you mean, this better place? And that all plays off of this kind of heaven theology that we've created about when you die, you go to this magic, heaven place. And again, that is just to comfort us, to make us feel not as bad that we don't have this person in our life anymore. Then you go on to, well, they're not suffering anymore. At least they're not. And, if you think about it, I think it's just kind of backing into comfort making. Like, again, I want to believe that most people don't sit down and think that through and realize really that's a hard, probably emotionally sterile thing to say to somebody versus, man, this is really horrible. And I can't imagine you going through anything more heartbreaking, and I'm sorry. Yeah. And then just stop right there. You don't need to.
Yeah, that's the one that I heard the most often. At least she's not in pain anymore. At least she's not suffering anymore. And I'll say the only people who are actually allowed to say that are my family, my granddad, my mom, my sister, because we all witnessed the pain firsthand. And so we know how much pain she was in. You don't know. You have no idea. And how dare you make me feel guilty that I still want her here, even though she was in pain?
People say stupid things. And I think, again, it's just hand-me-down theology, and it's something that we heard and we repeat. And when people get called out, I hope that, maybe even people who are listening to this are going to go, oh, I'm not ever going to say those stupid things again.
Oh, let me tell you another one that doesn't apply to very many people. But a conversation that I had immediately after her memorial with someone who felt, I don't know, like the amount of arrogance this person had to feel like they could say this to me, started asking, in a very judgmental tone, what did your grandmother think about your tattoos? And I was like, she loved them. And she said, well, really? Because you know that those are forever, right? Like, what if you regret them? And I'm like, this is the day that you're going to have a conversation with me. And first of all, you're going to introduce the thought that your grandmother was disappointed in you for having tattoos. And second, you're going to tell me, those are forever, right? What? I had no idea.
Are you serious?
Nobody told me. What if you regret them someday? And I'm like, I just celebrated the life of my grandmother, and like, this is the conversation you want to have with me, lady I just met for the first time?
You want to say, you've got really bad timing, lady.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I don't know you well enough to even let you be this, personal with me, this intimate with me. And I don't know what you do. Did you just smile and walk away?
No, that's not really my style.
No, so I know. So
I told her, I was like, she loved them. She thought they were great. She told me when she saw my snake tattoo for the first time, she said that tattoo's going to get you a man. And she was always supportive of me. And she's the most amazing woman. And she was the first person I told, well, except for the first one, but the other one.
See, I would have done something really super ordinary, like, oh, you never saw great grandma's smoke tattoo?
Yeah. But it's just things like
we
that.
We went together and got them.
Yeah, that's not really a platitude, I would say. Like, not a lot of other people maybe experience that question. But like, why just pay attention to the things that you're talking about on that day, on any day. Mind your business.
What's that phrase? Watch the room, feel the room, or whatever. Like, just
read the room.
Read the room. Yeah, thank you. I knew it was close. It was one of those words. Again, people are there. They're they don't know what to do with themselves. We don't. And just so, if you're going to listen to this, make a note to yourself. Go to somebody's memorial service or wake or visitation. Just be present. Tell them I care about you, and then leave. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to make it all good. You don't need to like say a stupid joke or something that will lighten the mood. Their heart's broken. You're not going to fix it. Hug them and leave.
Yeah.
That's my new rule. Hug and leave.
Yeah.
So what about this devotion? What do we want to get into this? You ready?
I was just about to apologize for anyone listening who are like, I did the devotion this month and y'all haven't even talked about it.
Well, we had to go on a little trip first.
We did. So day one, she kind of, so the title of day one is, but how do I get through the next 86,400 seconds?
So what is that?
A day, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
A day.
Well, somebody calculate that.
86,400 seconds in a day. So how do I get through the next day, basically?
Well, all right.
And one of the quotes she had in this devotion, which I really liked, but I was also confused by, she said, when we love deeply, we hurt deeply. This is why we have to learn how to trust the process of healing. We have to let it ebb and flow around, in, and through us. We have to grant it access to our heart. And that's what you were talking about earlier, is just like letting the emotion flow whenever it hits you. But I want to know to you, what does it look like to lean in and trust the process of healing? She said, trust the process of healing. Well, this is new for me. There's no roadmap or blueprint for what the process of healing looks like. Well, I guess is where trust comes in. But
okay, so I think this is a great question. So it means you're going to cry one day when you have chicken and waffles. The process is that it is like there was a I don't know if she's a sociologist. I'll call her a sociologist. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with these stages of grief, which are great, but it used to kind of create this image, and y'all aren't going to get this on audio, but that there were steps, right? That was like, oh, okay, I just did step one of grief, and then step two, and step three, and step four. Nowadays, people have recognized that those are the stages of grief, but it's more like wiki-wacky, spirograph all over the place or whatever. And I make up that this, what's her phrase? Trust the process. The process is one day you're going to feel good, another day you're going to feel like crap. One day you're going to want to eat a lot, drink a lot, whatever, a lot. The next day you're going to say, world, go to hell, leave me alone. That it is a slow, incremental baby step walking through to a place you don't even know yet that you're going, but you still just keep going.
Well, and that's another thing. So this one, I was like, I know this feeling. So she said, loss envelops us with a grief that comes in unpredictable waves. It's hard to know if you're getting better when a string of good days suddenly gives way to an unexpected emotional crash. It's in those moments where I find myself whispering, am I going to feel like this forever? Is it always going to hurt this much? And that, I will say one of the things that someone said that was really helpful to me, and I continue to go back to it. My partner, Jacob, he experienced loss and has experienced loss in his life. And so he knows how to not deal with it, but he knows the feelings that come with it.
Sure.
And so my partner helped me a lot through this. And one of the things that he told me is, when you're feeling these emotions about grandmommy, it's a testament to your love for her. And what a beautiful thing that you loved her so much that a year later you're still crying that she's not here.
Yeah.
And so that makes me feel grateful when in those moments I'm tearing up and it kind of brings in like these bittersweet feelings of like, I miss her so much, but what a beautiful thing that I miss her so much. And how lucky I am to have experienced a love that deep and that lasting.
Yeah. See, I think that we have this mistaken idea that better means different or like, it's going
back to the way I was before.
Yeah. And I think better just means I have accepted that life is going on, but I am going on differently now. I'm not going to go back to how it was before. I'm going to a new place without that person. And what I get to carry with them, from them, is, memory. I mean, I think that's where I think God's gift to us. And it's not, I mean, some people don't always have good memories of people who are gone, right? But memory is the thing that we hold on to, the scent, the smell, the dance, the giggle, the sense of humor, the whatever.
Yeah. And one of the things that she talks about in day one that I'm not sure, I mean, I guess I agree with, but I don't know. I haven't fully, I don't get it fully. She talks about how seasons of suffering, God uses that time to build strength in us. And it kind of goes back to, you and I have had conversations about, I don't believe God makes bad things happen. I don't believe that God is like plucking lives from the world and deciding who stays and who goes. I think that God can make good out of bad situations, and I think that God can help us see good in the world even when we've suffered extreme loss. I don't know. What are your thoughts on like God is strengthening us while we're suffering, while we're mourning?
Her thought about, so a long season of suffering resulted in God building a strength in you. Okay, I guess. So I believe that seasons of suffering can result in us being stronger people. A lot of people go through long seasons of suffering and become angry, bitter people. So help me up with that one then. Was that part of the plan? Or did they just not do good on their homework?
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and I think that's a lovely little buzzword we love to bring up. It has to do with vulnerability. Am I willing to stay open? Because if I'm not willing to stay open, I start to harden and I become bitter and I become a pessimist and I am unwilling to trust and I'm unwilling to move forward and all of these things. I think it's a combination of both in each of us. Like there are times that I feel very open to the world and there are times I can feel myself closing off and I can feel myself hardening and wanting to shut the world out. And I don't think it's because I'm not healing the right way. I think it's just, what day is it?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and if you believe the phrase that goes something like this, she's doing the best she can with what she knows and what she has in that moment. Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of other ways to say that. But if we're all doing the best we can, which, a lot of people enjoy kind of tearing that phrase up, but that means that like some of the journeys I go on, I'm not going to learn crap from. Other journeys I'm going to go on and I'm going to learn a little bit. But I don't know. I just feel like it's this collective that there's a whole bunch of lessons in life we get to keep repeating. And eventually, it's like strengthening a muscle, I hear. Mm-hmm. You work out and it gets a little better, a little stronger. And then once you quit using it, it goes away again. So I don't know. I think that whatever happens when I move into the next realm, it would be interesting if there was like a what's it called when you, like a departing interview? What's that called when like you leave?
Your exit interview?
My exit interview. Thank you. I hope there's a good debrief.
Yeah.
Or an exit interview where I can say, well, here's what I got right and wrong. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, we've heard that before. Or, yeah you got that way wrong, Mayor.
Well, and I think, so what's interesting about all of this is, my therapist has taught me, and I know that there's a lot of deep research that can go into this, so I know very little about it, but how the greatest opportunity for personal growth happens when you're in liminal space. That liminal space being, I feel lost. I don't know what's true. I don't know what I believe. And because in those moments, you're more open to, okay, what is the point? Like, what does the universe have in store for me? Who is God and what is God doing? And you start asking questions. But as soon as you have the answers, you're not in liminal space anymore and you stop growing.
Yeah. Yeah. But
We're constantly like in that tension of like, I want answers. Please give me the answers. Okay, I feel like I have an answer now. And I stop growing and I cling on to that answer until at one point I find out the answer I thought I had is not the answer. And I enter back into liminal space.
Yeah. It kind of, the image that came to my mind while you were saying all that was like, just imagine kind of a Star Trekian environment in which we go out into this vulnerability space, right? Recognizing I don't know what I don't know, but I know enough to know I need to go and seek it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to put myself out into this vulnerable situation. We go on a little research mission, we gather it up, and then we go back to the mothership. And then sometimes, oh my gosh, I didn't learn everything I need to learn. We go back out there. Mm-hmm. Some people have the type of personality that they're always out there. They're always wondering and seeking, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have to re-enter. Some of us need like a little time to shore up and go. So, yeah, I'm like you. I love a good liminal space conversation, but then it's tiring and I want to take a nap and have a glass of wine and because then also I don't want everybody in my liminal space. Mm-hmm. I don't want irritating people.
Well, and we went down that path because maybe that liminal space is where strength is building, you're learning all of those things. So the scripture that they reference in day one is 1 Peter 5:10. It says, after you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, the one who called you into his eternal glory in Christ Jesus, will himself restore, empower, strengthen, and establish you. So my first question was, wait a second, why after I've suffered for a little while, God, like, can't you just like swoop in right away and make me feel restored, empowered, and strengthened and establish me? Like, that would be great.
I know, I read that too. And it's like, it's such a funny little phrase, isn't it? You have suffered for a little while. Yeah. Well, what's a little while? And who gets to decide how little a little while is? And,
So maybe, what it is saying is like, hey, God recognizes you got to be in that liminal space. Like, you got to feel lost sometimes. You have to have doubts. You have to have, and in one of the days, I guess I'll go into day 2 right now. Yep. She talks about, so the way I interpret that scripture is God encourages you, like, roll around in that, like, get in the dirt and the mud a little bit and experience what life is. But then in day 2, she's like, but don't let it lead to doubts. And I'm like, wait, why not?
What's wrong with doubt?
Yeah, what's wrong with doubt? So I think the only note I put on day 2 was, this day made me angry.
Well, doubt, I think that there are people for whom somebody else doubting is scary, and that they're going to lose them out of the Christian faith flock or something. Whereas I find doubt is kind of like a muscle that you exercise, and I don't know, I doubt a whole lot. Mm-hmm. And there's probably some things, I wish I'd made a list of things I doubted that I don't doubt anymore. Mm. And because I really have very little figured out. I don't think it's a long list, but I don't know. I wish I had in front of me a text with all the phrases that doubt is used in the Bible. Mm. And if you can substitute the word doubt for wonder or question, we have added a negative connotation to doubt, right? Like, because we hold it over and against what we call fact. And so we've decided, well, I doubt X, right? That means I'm going to discredit or I don't believe it or whatever. So then it feels like this big trauma. Oh my God, you're doubting God.
Yeah.
No, I'm
well,
not.
And the story that she brought up is like probably one of the more famous stories of Peter denying Jesus 3 times. And it starts out, this is going to be the Alyssa version of scripture.
Okay.
It starts out with Peter saying, I would never deny you, Jesus. You're my best friend, BFF, forever. And then sure enough, Peter is like, I don't know this guy. People
Jesus
confront
who?
him and they're like, hey, aren't you like
No.
that guy that's been convicted of this crime? Like, you roll with him, right? And Peter's like, no, I don't know him.
I don't know him.
This guy, no, not at all. And then there's that famous Jesus looks at Peter and is like, told you so. Although she says Jesus specifically isn't saying told you so. It's like a knowing, loving, like, I love you, I forgive you, all that. But so she ends with a prayer, she goes through this whole story about, Peter denying Jesus. And she says, prayerfully ask the Lord to reveal any places you've been denying Jesus and to give you relief from your unbelief. And so my thought was, what does denying Jesus have anything to do with my grief? And are you saying that if I'm in grief, I'm not believing enough in the promises that God has made? Like, maybe that is what she's saying. I don't know.
It sounds like she's intimating that, but again, there is a theology that says we should all be strong through all fill in the blank.
But it's so fake. It's not real. Nobody can be that.
No, but it's an unachievable expectation, right? And
then we all just pretend to be strong.
Well, and then we do these things, like she's saying the phrase. I think any of those times that you or I would call just living into our humanity and our emotion and all that, she's calling, and which would then be wondering, questioning, doubting, that we're denying Jesus. That's what I make up.
And maybe it's true.
Okay. And
can Jesus handle that?
And well, that was my next question. And so what of it?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's a whole other day.
Peter seemed to do okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of
I'm sure Jesus would.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And Jesus handled it. And
guilt and shame. I'm sure Peter was feeling all the things.
And we market those really well in the church to manage people's behaviors, right? Yeah.
But, I told you, I liked her devotion. Like,
I did too.
1, 3, 4, and 5, I was very happy with. Day 2, it just felt icky. It's like, I don't understand what connection you're trying to make here, that if I'm grieving, I'm not trusting God enough.
It kind of felt like it was, be careful because your grief is going to really be slippery and you don't want it to go there. So, just watch yourself. Well, I don't know. I don't find that very comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with
All right,
you.
let's move on to day 3 because we don't like day 2.
No. We're going to call her and ask her to explain day 2.
So day 3, there is something that she did that I really liked. And she compared accepting loss to baking a cake. And we have to combine the good and the bad to feel whole and complete. She said, so I like to think of grief in terms of baking. Imagine we go to the store to buy all of the ingredients we need to make a cake, but then we feel too tired to mix it all together. Instead, we decide to enjoy the cake one ingredient at a time, like a rational, reasonable person.
Yeah.
The thing is that sometimes we don't like some of the individual ingredients, so we'd rather leave them out. The flour is too dry, leave it out. The sugar, the butter, and the vanilla are all good, leave them in. The eggs are gross when raw, throw them out. And then our cake would never be made mature and complete, not lacking anything. So I guess I like the analogy because it leaves space for us to say, okay, it's okay to experience the good feelings and the bad feelings and put it all together in something. If we're willing to embrace it and let all of it come as it comes, we'll end up with some yummy cake at the end. Maybe.
Oh.
Maybe. I feel like that completely contradicts day 2, but we're done talking about day 2. So let's move on.
Moving on. So what I take from that, I guess, is that all of the stuff of life, the good and the hard, work together for another creation. I thought there were some other interesting things that from week 3, I picked up on this, and either I read it into it because I don't remember her exact quote, but just that sorrow and celebration can coexist. That, there's room in how we are made to hold in balance really strong feelings. Like, you can have just a horrible, no good, very bad day and be, walking away from the graveside of a loved one and still also celebrate the birthday of a 3-year-old. I mean, that's an okay thing to do. And that, life is full like that, and life is rich like that. And, sometimes it kind of pisses us off because we'd rather it be all one or the other. Mm-hmm. But
compartmentalize, please.
Yes. Help me emotionally manage, please.
Yeah.
Yep. No, so I like that about that. Was it in that week that she used the James text? And I think I quoted it correctly. It says, "You learn to endure by having your faith tested. You must learn to endure everything." That's James 1:2-4.
Yep.
And you learn to endure by having your faith tested. See, again, that uses that language.
I don't want to think any grief or loss we're experiencing as a test.
I don't either. And enduring means just putting up with and getting through. What if it meant strengthening and getting stronger? And who, does it say, do you have that text?
Yeah.
Where does it say you must learn to endure everything?
Maybe it depends on what version. So
All right.
I'm in the Common English Bible version. I can
All
switch
right.
to a different one if we want to test it
No,
out.
give us
But
that
it says, "My brothers and sisters, think of the various tests you encounter as occasions for joy. After all, you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. Let this endurance complete its work so that you may be fully mature, complete, and lacking in nothing."
Think of the various tests you encounter. So we make an assumption that out of our cultural context, that somebody's in charge of the test. How about if it's just think of the stuff you go through as occasions? And James decided to use the word test to describe just the stuff of life.
Let's look at the Message and see. Oh, no, it's not much better. Well, maybe it's a little better because the Message, I feel like, does a good job of bringing forward a more common language.
Yeah.
So it says, "Consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. You know that under pressure, your faith life is forced into the open and shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely. Let it do its work so you become mature and well-developed, not deficient in any way." So I like the wording of when tests and challenges come at you from all sides, because it's not like, here is a test being put upon you.
Right.
It's more of like, they're all around you. They're coming from every direction, and nobody's doing this to you. It's just the world
It's
we
not
live
like
in.
a test on chapter 3. It's just the stuff of life. Yeah, I like that. And I would agree with that. I think I could get my head around that.
Oh.
Way to go, Message.
All right.
Day 4.
Womb or tomb? I was very intrigued by her question. It kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of this episode. There are some people who take loss and grief and turn into hardened, bitter people. And there are some people who really come out the other side, like stronger and more open to the world. And so she asked the question, will we see our dark times as a womb or a tomb? A womb meaning it is nurturing and growing and strengthening and recreating us, transforming us. And the tomb being, it's where we go to die.
Yeah. So that implies we have to make a choice, whereas I think maybe it's a little bit of both. Sometimes I move into a tomb because I just don't want to deal or put the energy into any of it. And eventually it becomes my attitude helps create the wombness out of my tomb. So I think it also implies that we have choice. And so on this journey of mourning and grieving and loss, that we find ourselves in places that if we so choose, we can curl up and die, perhaps emotionally, or we can, in our pain, go, I'm gonna grab some nurturing from this. I'm gonna stay safe for a while, and then I'm gonna go out into the world.
Yeah. Man, I'm going to call out my bias here because initially I was like, ooh, I really like that question. Dark times as a womb or tomb. But in our original episode, I said one of my biases is I can be a dualistic thinker. And it's either the womb or the tomb. There's no in between.
No,
you're either living or you're dying. And it doesn't have to be that. It can be, we don't have to choose between one or the other.
If we're stuck with those choices and we're kind of making up what the author was intending, what I draw from the womb analogy is that eventually it is a place that is life-giving and nurturing. But what we also know, I don't think you can stay in a womb forever, right? And there are like a occupancy. You can't. I mean, like
I have never been with child, so I mean, I'm
Well,
sure that yeah.
all things in
common
wombs must
sense
eventually
points
come
to
out. I don't.
you cannot stay in the womb forever.
All right, I think we're very safe in our limited medical knowledge and making that a fact.
Could we get a doctor in the room?
Yes, but I'm going to anchor it that you do not stay in there forever, but it is for the most part, when things go as our bodies, could or should, that's a good and nurturing and safe place. You grow and you're expelled. Tombs is where, people are laid to rest from whom no future life is expected. So one is all about a place to go and grow and nurture to be ready. The other is to go and never come back again.
Yeah, but let me throw this spice in the pot.
Oh. Okay.
The tomb wasn't the end for Jesus.
Yeah, but you're no Jesus.
Rude.
So,
shut that down. I guess I'll put that back on the spice rack.
Yeah, well, so yeah, I think, yeah, there's only one.
Because that's what I'm wondering, right? Is even if we choose to curl up and be scared and embrace the darkness, that doesn't have to be forever either. And maybe it's a little bit harder to get to the light after we've chosen to embrace the darkness, but also that's part of your journey, and God can always get you back to the light, and if you're open to it. And it doesn't mean you always have to be open to it, but at one point you have to decide you're open to receiving.
Well, so
life.
Like she asked the question, what are the consequences of going in each of those directions?
Oh, that was my question. I asked that question.
Okay. Oh, okay. Because see, I think that's a great follow-up question. Like the consequence could be that I lived in the tomb for a while and was like, "Oh, tombs suck. I want out of here. This is dark and dank and smelly."
I think of times I've lived in the tomb.
Mm-hmm.
I lost relationships. I felt disconnected from the world. I had a bad attitude every morning when I woke up. I was not a joy to be around. Like it's not fun living in the tomb.
Yeah, no, I go. But I'm pretty sure if I sat here long enough, I could think of people for whom the loss in their lives, because this is about grief, was so dramatic and traumatic that they gave up. That they just moved in the tomb and said,
"It's safer.
I'm safer here, and come what may, this is it.
I don't have to go through the trauma of birth."
True. Wow. Are we at day 5? Okay. And I think I captured this from her because I don't think I think I wrote it down just like it is. She says, "We don't have to be afraid of how He, God, is going to shape our lives. He is the God who somehow makes everything beautiful in its time. Seeing the beauty in life again will require us to stay moldable by Him." Okay. And so, yeah, I agree with a lot of what she says. There's a lot of fear in going down the road of grief. And, I guess I translate that into, hang in there.
Yeah.
God's with you. And however that appears to you. And that at the end she says, somehow makes everything beautiful in its time. That this journey is unpredictable. There's no such thing as closure and, well, I think I've got it all figured out now. No, not really. It's just the journey, and it's going to take a while. And again, that implies destination versus transformation. And I think that, that's an ongoing process. That's not an arrival. So, I don't know. I think that, I hope that people have appreciated this safe place to talk about the unfigure-outable stuff of loss and grief. And that there are some facts that we know to be true. It hurts like hell. And it will not hurt the same amount as hellish every day forever. That in time it hurts a little less. And that you'll be able to breathe again deeper in time. but it takes time. And we're rushed, I think, sometimes in our grieving because the people who do life with us need us to move on.
Yeah. Because they don't know. They don't know how to continue. And that's actually one of the things that my partner, who, as I mentioned, has experienced loss, is really good about, is that when one of his friends is going through a loss, he reaches out to them and he says, hey, you're going to hear from a lot of people in the next 3 weeks who want to support you and be there for you and everything. But he's like, when it's really going to start hurting is 2 or 3 months from now. Give me a call, because that's when people stop showing up with the casseroles and when people don't ask you how you're doing anymore, because we have it. I feel like even when we've been through grief ourselves, like we're like, okay, I don't want to handle your mess right now. Could you just like heal a little faster for me? Thanks.
Well, I think we have somehow, and I don't think there was a meeting for this, but an apportioned amount of time that is appropriate for grieving.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere has decided, what it's like. Oh, okay, you're done. You need to move on now.
I don't know what that timing is. I know it's definitely less than a year. People want you to be over it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe less than 6 months. People want you to be over it,
Mm-hmm.
or at least keep it to yourself.
Well, and they ask silly questions. I'm sure you've been asked, like, "Oh, how you doing?"
And then they do the puppy dog eyes. Yeah.
And you're supposed to say back a measurement that lets them know that you're progressing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you picked up on that cue yet? And because it's really not about you when they're asking, it's about them. Like they want to know,
getting better every
can I
day.
be less emotionally available for her? I need her to move on now. I need us to go get chicken and waffles again.
I don't think I do pick up on those cues,
Mm-hmm.
because when someone, well, no, I'm dishonest with everybody. I lie. I lie to everyone, especially if you're
You
not
just
in
create
my
the
inner
answer
circle.
that kind of
They're
wraps up the moment.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
yeah,
like,
I
oh,
get
how
that.
are you doing? I'm like, I'm
Oh,
fine,
I'm good.
fine. You know,
When you say it real short like that, is that short for like get the hell out of my face?
yeah.
Okay.
Taking mental notes.
I am. No, and
So-
Lisa says.
So I
fine.
want to know, because you and I are kind of, with the theme of unlearning loss, we're breaking all of the stereotypical places that people go to find comfort.
Okay.
So since we have kind of broken all of those things of like the platitudes and maybe even like places that you would have found comfort in scripture before, like we're unlearning some of those things. Where is it that you personally find hope when you're going through loss?
So some of that goes back to where I have encounters with with God and how I understand God. So for me, it's nature. It is a lot of seeing everything from thunderstorm and rain showers, things that are like sensory reminders. Like I said earlier about the beauty of a sunset, cool winds, things that are so sharp. Like you might remember this. So the week after we had my mom's funeral, I spent a week in sub-zero weather in Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
And it, for me, was very life-giving. Just being out there in this, when it's below zero, there is a cold and a crispness that penetrates you that was very comforting and was like, yeah, I understand, God. There's a big, there's a big plan here. I'm nowhere at all approaching an ability to understand it, but thank you for the reminder that the planet's going to keep moving around.
Yeah.
And so, I find comfort in being with people who don't have to make me feel comfortable, who can just let me be, a grump or whatever. And I appreciate people who use a little bit of a sixth sense and go, hey, you know what? Let's just go get a pizza, because they know that sometimes food comforts me. Or, hey, let's not do anything but just sit here and watch, a stupid TV show. And who create an environment that there is a low bar of expectation, but they are very available. And they recognize that in that space, I will probably lean into vulnerability. Yeah. And but they make it my choice, not their expectation.
Oh my gosh, I love those people who are very specific in what they want to give you. It's like, hey, do you want to go watch a stupid movie with me today? as opposed to people who are saying, just let me know if there's anything I can do for you.
Yeah.
Like, no.
That's too hard.
I don't think so. I can't wrap my head around what I need. But when I have that friend who's like, hey, we could do this, or we could do this, or we could do this, pick from one of those 3 things, and I'll do that with you this weekend. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, these are.
Yeah. That's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think, I kind of sometimes chastise people at the end of like a funeral or graveside to not say to people, hey, let me know what you need, because that puts the burden of self-care on us. And I think in that season, other people should rise to the occasion and be on the lookout. Like I said, not long ago, I said, if you think their yard needs mowing, go mow their yard.
Yeah.
If you think they're hungry, take them food. Don't make them have to tell you, yes, I need you to come now and give me food. Chances are they're going to need it. Just do it.
They'll eat it eventually.
Yeah. Or
they'll give it to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, that was a long
Did we get it figured out?
Conversation. No.
No, that's okay.
But that's not the point of this series. We end with more questions than answers every time. But hopefully, if you are experiencing loss right now and you are heading into Christmas, like Doug and I, wondering, how am I going to handle all of this? Yeah. It's okay. And I hope that that's what you take away from this episode, is that it is okay to not be okay. It is okay to let your feelings emerge in the weird, wacky ways that they do in unexpected times, unexpected places. I will try and practice that with you and just let it happen.
It's okay also to take Christmas off this year. Just to say, you know what, we're going to do it way differently.
Yeah.
Like, I would encourage you to make a game plan so that you don't wake up and feel like you just got hit by a bus. Like, go somewhere different, do something totally that you would never have done. And that's okay. And the other thing you can do, if you live around us, call me. I'll go have a hot chocolate with you or something. And you don't even have to talk to me. We'll just drink hot chocolate and just nod. Peace out. Because you don't, if you're just in a really crappy, dark, funk tomb place, you don't have to do that by yourself. Let somebody else kind of at least sit on the rock with you.
All right. So next month, January, we're in 2022.
Dun, da, 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 da,
So next month we are unlearning jealousy.
Dang it.
I love
jealousy.
I know. It seems like a really good topic for the beginning of the year when we're just scrolling through everybody's Instagram posts on their perfect Christmas.
Well, that or the people who say they're going to go work out and they already have like the beach body and all that, and are fat shaming all the rest of us. So.
Yeah. So our reading plan for next month out of YouVersion is called Break Free from Envy. This one's a little bit a longer one. It's a 6-day devotion. So
we can do it.
We can do it. We can do this. And so as always, there is a link to that reading plan in the episode description. So let's unlearn jealousy. But we're under the topic of jealousy, but the title is Break Free from Envy. I know jealousy and envy are 2 different things. I think we're just going to cover all of it. So I guess the strictest definition is like jealousy is you're afraid of taking something from you that you have. So you're a jealous lover. They describe God as a jealous God, things like that. And then envy is I want what you have.
I want what you have.
So they're different, but we don't really do a good job of
No, we use them real interchangeable.
Those.
It's kind of like, that old metaphor, like they're both different sides of the same coin.
Yeah, so I'm sure we will talk about both jealousy and envy, and maybe even dive into that whole idea of we worship a jealous God, because I've always had questions about that.
Wow.
Yeah, so I hope that you will join us in January for Unlearn Jealousy. And man, if you're experiencing loss right now, reach out to us. We can do that with you.
Well, amen.